For those who know me, I don't preach often from Revelation, but from the 3rd verse of the 21st chapter, we hear, "And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Now the dwelling of God is with all people, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God.'" What if you were to picture a world that's tired and gray? The citizens that live in this world live in fear as the standard has become every person for themselves. Community has been destroyed by personal ambition, the destruction of cooperation. Political correctness has driven out the ability to survive in healthy competition. All need to succeed to a point where no one can. Areas that were once playground of little children are now nestings of flocks that have gathered together for the sole purpose of suppressing others and instilling fear through the use of drugs and weapons. Picture a world, if you will, where all happiness has been erased. Not a pleasant picture, is it? For many of us, we would find it extremely difficult to survive in a world as such, but yet this world is very much alive and very much near us. Parts of this world live in communities not far from here. We see the development of gangs and the warfare that comes from it in the cities across our nation. We see, or at least hear, of these activities coming closer to our homes, out here in the burbs. We see our community playgrounds becoming less used by little children of the neighborhood, as they're taken over by older kids who seem to have nothing else to do. These older children have nothing to do because the jobs that were once dominated by teens are no longer available. It's becoming harder for teenagers to find work after school as employers don't trust their work ethics and the jobs simply aren't there. So they hang out in parks because they can't fathom hanging out at home, where many of them feel as though they failed before they even had a chance to succeed. Even our workplaces are buried in the competition of what we can do for ourselves. People taking credit for a good idea that came from another colleague to get into the good graces of our boss, or others simply leaving fellow workers out of the loop so that they look better. These are common attitudes in the cutthroat world of business. Whatever happened to teamwork and everyone being for the same cause? This morning, as I listen to this passage from Revelation, where John envisions this new heaven and this new earth, I think about how this would play into our world today. I use this passage often in funerals. And even as a child, I pictured my own heaven in my mind. As a child, it would include nice, pretty white angels with beautiful white wings hovering on clouds. But as I grew older, I pictured more of a world much like Eden, where man and woman had everything they needed and were able to once again walk unashamedly with each other and with God. And this is all good. This is fine. I know someday I will find out what heaven will be like, and in many ways, I look forward to it. Death is a new beginning for many of us. It will be an escape from this world. And most of us don't like where it's headed. And it will be a welcoming into God's full glory. But what about the meanwhile? How can we experience and be witness to this new heaven and earth while we are still alive, while we are still walking this earth? How can we live into it and for it today? Last night, this picture finally came clear for me. It came in the form of, yes, I know, it's really odd, but it came in the form of The Lion King. Yes, an animated movie showed me the revelation for this passage in Revelation. If you think about it, the world of the savannah had become much of what I described towards the end of the movie. But with the victory of Simba over his evil uncle Scar, the world falls back under its rightful king. And as he ascends the throne, the savannah world is restored to all of its beauty. It's plentiful and its natural state, the way God intended it to be. All the animals bow before the rightful king. And the animals proclaim his righteousness and mirth and majesty. A new heaven and a new world has become into the existence because the correct king has proclaimed that this is good. And now the dwelling of the king is with all people. And he will live with them. These will be his people. And the king himself will be with them and be their king. How different would our world be today if we would proclaim God as our King? The joys of being able to watch God ascend Pride Rock, to look and rule over everything where the light touches, to hear the people praising God, knowing that now the dwelling of God is with all people. And God will live with them. They will be God's people. And God himself will be with them and be their God. To have this revelation come again would truly change the world. For many, we've come to this personal realization in our world. And as we wake to the rising sun in the morning, we quietly and enthusiastically proclaim these words. And therefore we know that our day will be lived in this new world. Regardless as to what happens today or in our lives, we live with this peace because we know that the right king is in place. Last week we talked about the disasters that happened across our nation. But the stories were a little different this week. This week we heard the stories, the amazing tales of those who survived. One woman, her name is Sharon, was standing at the end of the race in Boston, waiting to cheer her mother as her mother was preparing to complete her first marathon. But Sharon did not get to see the finish. Because as she was standing near the end, she became a victim to vomit. And through the injuries that she suffered, she ended having both legs amputated. What would seem like an end to her world to some, she took the inspiration that came her way to find hope. And while she lay in her hospital bed, a young man, also a double leg amputee, rolled into her room and spoke with her. You see, this young man served in the army and lost both of his legs from an IED in Afghanistan. His words encouraged her to embrace this new life that she had, this new world that she was to live in. And as they talked, this young man shared how he was about to participate in his first marathon. the upcoming weeks. Sharon shuddered at this thought, not because he was doing so from a wheelchair, because she had always wanted to run but couldn't. And she chuckled as she shared with him and said, "You see, I've never been able to run because I've always suffered from really bad shin splints. I guess I don't have those problems anymore." And she has already set her goal to run her first marathon in a wheelchair. You see, when we envision a new heaven and a new earth, the old ones are still there, but we live in them in a different light, a stronger light. We're able to see clearer because of that light that comes before us. It's kind of like waking up in the middle of the night and walking across your room by the light given by the moon. But when we get up a few hours later, we can walk that same path with a whole lot more ease because of the light of the sun. It's stronger. It's brighter, better illuminating the direction we need to take, showing the pitfalls, the obstacles. When we bow down before God, before Christ, acknowledging Him as our rightful King, that light shines more clearly for us. We're no longer living for ourselves, but rather for the King. Our goal is to give all we can to our faithful God, and He in turn will be with us and for us. We have no fear to live in this world regardless of how bad it may seem, because we are no longer the center of it. And yes, there are those who confess that they have accepted Christ as their Savior. But yet they still live in a world submerged in the depth of fear, pain, sorrow. Their lives seem to have no purpose or hope. Their days circle around trying to survive, and they desire, they hope, they pray to get off of this nauseating merry-go-round of a life. We know people like this. In many days, we feel like we may be on that ride ourselves. They have confessed with their tongues, but they're still living in the old world and have not embraced the new heaven and earth. They have not welcomed God to be their King. They have not discovered what it truly means to be in His presence. Let's face it. We like control. We want to have it and be in control of everything at every moment. And that's fine until we come to the realization that we will never be in control unless we look towards God up on Pride Rock. Only when we acknowledge in our hearts, not our minds, not with our mouths, but when we confess in our hearts that God is the rightful and righteous King, our world will never change. There will be good days and bad days. But until then, our world won't change. So let the fires destroy all that is bad and evil in our world. Let the rain wash away all that has been destroyed. Welcome our King as He ascends the throne that He established to rule over the world that He created. Let us proclaim on our tongues and in our hearts. Now, the dwelling of God is with all people, and He will live with them. They will be His people, and God Himself will be with them.